Ladies and gentlemen, in this video I will be showing you two of the worst chess games ever played. That is not an exaggeration. There have probably been some 50 to 100 billion total chess games played in the history of humanity, counting the publicly available ones online and estimating for those offline. And the two games you will watch today are up there in the top 1% of worst games ever played. I paired two of the worst chess bots in the world against each other. Very likely the two worst chess bots. Martin, who is a perennial contender for biggest catastrophe to happen in the world of chess, period, and Polly, which is a new bot on chess.com. It's a Venezuelan parrot. I don't know. Don't ask me any questions, all right? Just sit back, relax, and just enjoy this absolute disaster. The second game in particular that you will watch today, just shocking. Absolutely shocking, catastrophic stuff. Polly is a disastrous bot, and I paired it against the king of disasters, and that, of course, is Martin. So we're going to open up first game with the move c4. By the way, these games are completely 100% real. I don't fabricate content on this channel, except my Grandmaster dreams. But other than that, I don't fabricate anything. c4, Martin opens up with e5. We have an English opening, a reverse Sicilian defense for those of you that are cultured and watching and enjoying. g3, the king's bishop English opening. Try to play like this. Martin plays queen to g5. We have lasted 1.5 moves and nothing, and I really do truly mean nothing, is going to make any sense anymore. Martin plays queen to g5, and Polly the bird plays a4. So no longer developing any pieces, pawn moving on the outskirts of the board. Martin doesn't develop any pieces either, plays queen f6. Very mysterious. Not really clear what's going on here with the queen, maybe looking for a scholar's mate opportunity. All of that is thwarted by the uber powerful f3. Certainly a questionable move. Now, I once made a video on quite literally the worst chess game mathematically possible, which is when both sides play the worst possible move at every moment. This is close. Black plays h6. Can't really explain that move. Don't know. And now the bird plays queen c2. Very mysterious queen moves. This is almost looking like a completely different board game where you're strategizing. Like Battleship, you just land on random squares. b6, Martin responds with a smirk on his face because even he himself doesn't know what's going on. And now we have this powerful move f4, which of course violates a million different opening principles like not developing your pieces, moving a piece twice, but it also blunders a pawn and leaves the king irreparably damaged. Pawn takes f4 is the move, and apparently a mistake because queen e4 check would attack the king and the rook. There is absolutely no chance that that move happens, and instead we have pawn to d3, which not only doesn't win a rook, it just gives away another pawn, and after pawn takes, Black is comfortably up a pawn. Black also has a nice opportunity to jump in here with the knight, develop the bishop to c5, taking full control of this diagonal, and infiltrating with the queen. We're going to see just truly how much of that happens. Bishop c5 on the board played. Polly plays king d2. Of all the pieces it can move, the bird moves the king. That is just a free bishop. And then that will also perish in the battle. Complete abandonment of the position. Martin responds a5, which is a move that is legal. White now develops the knight to the h3 square. At least the bishop is protected temporarily. And once again, of any piece that you could guess that one of these two could move, you would not guess king to d8. King to d8, and now the bird, Polly, plays b4, which simultaneously blunders the pawn two different ways and the rook in one go. Martin doesn't do any of that, and we all know the saying, when you can take a rook for free, if you can attack the other one, it's probably the better move. King to e1 on the board, blundering both rooks at the same time. And Martin actually takes. Look at that. If you mess around with Martin too much, he will punish you. I mean, he is a married man and a father of some 1,000 children. I don't remember the exact lore, but chess.com has unpacked his lore a little bit. And the bird just moves the king again because it's a bird. It can't play chess. It can't play chess, bro. It can't play chess. It hangs the other rook, and oh my god. Oh my god. King to e8 from Martin, and now the bird begins its comeback by blundering the rook one more time. And we get queen centralizing in the middle of the board on the e5 square, and it actually uses its pawn. It takes the wrong piece, but at least it took something. Pawn takes a5. Martin once again moving the king, and we have a queen trade offered by the bird. So queen trade, queen takes queen, bishop takes. This rook has been hanging for at least half the game at this point. The game is 15 moves long, so hanging for like 5, 6, 7 moves. And now something fascinating happens. Martin explodes. That might sound like I'm just, using hyperbolic language, which is a big word that some of you might not understand. No, Martin quite literally explodes. Martin loses his queen. And you would think, well, that's not so bad because he can still take a rook, and he won a rook originally. Like, he could play pawn to f6 attacking the queen, and then he could win the rook. Martin loses the queen and proceeds to play the worst possible move on the board, which is blundering his rook in the corner, which also blunders the knight because the knight is then pinned to the king. Martin manages to lose 9, 14, 17 points of material by force in a span of 3 moves. That's even more impressive than some of you can pull off. Now, Polly is 199. There is absolutely no way this orange bird is going to take everything. It takes everything. It takes 20 points of material from Martin, and it's only going to get worse. Now, normally these low elo bonds are programmed to self-destruct at some point. You're not actually supposed to beat them, right? They're supposed to lose to you. The bird proceeds to take the pawn with the check, king to f8, and now we can take the bishop, forking the king and the rook, and then win the rook. Yo, the bird can take 29 points of material from Martin. For the record, at the beginning of a game, I am pretty certain you start with 38 or 39 points of material. I'm remembering this off the top of my head. You can sum it up. Dude, it's going to take like 70%, 80%. Almost, of all of his pieces. It goes here. Oh my god. Now I'm like, all right, here comes the comeback from Martin. Here comes the comeback. Queen goes to check. Queen comes back. They're going to make a draw by repetition, obviously, because they're low-level bots. Knight takes g5 on the board from the freaking Venezuelan bird, and it can take on h6, but it's obviously not going to spot that move. The bird is about to checkmate Martin. Queen h8 is mate in 1, even without the knight. Now, Martin is really good at least surviving, and just at least surviving. Bishop e3 check. Okay, you can take it. The bird doesn't take, and Martin goes here. Martin actually prevents checkmate, so I'm thinking maybe there's still a chance. You're telling me there's still a chance. The bird goes here. That move actually threatens mate. It doesn't look like it threatens mate. It threatens this move. So now the only move is bishop here, which Martin, for some reason, plays this move. Now you take the bishop and you win on the next move. And that's it. Any move that you play here, queen f8 is unstoppable checkmate. Martin makes a move. This is mate. This is mate. And Polly wins the game. Martin has now been beaten by a different species. Like, he loses to humans, but he has been defeated by a bird, bro. Now, of course, I did a rematch, and if Martin wins the next game, there will be a third game. That is the way it works. That is, we're sportsmanlike, you know? That's what we do. We're very fair. All right, here we go. So Martin in the next game has the white pieces, and we have a Sicilian defense on the board. Folks, buckle up. What you're about to witness, there should be trials, okay, for the people that have made these bots. Bishop c4 is fine. It's a normal move against the Sicilian. Queen b6, fine. Weird. Bringing out the queen early, not great, not too horrible. Martin, in this position, plays the move king to f1. I don't even know how they come up with this stuff. How did they program this guy to make not just bad moves, but such absurd moves they wouldn't even begin to cross our mind, ever? King f1, I didn't even realize the king could move there. Now, Polly moves the queen again, attacking the central pawn, which Martin actually protects, and then throws the h-pawn forward. Martin doesn't develop a knight. He plays pawn to c3. As long as you're not blundering anything, I really don't care. That move is completely fine. Polly now plays the move rook h7 and says, squawk! I surprise myself with that move. Good thing I like surprises. I mean, I don't even know what to say. F4, which is not a bad move. Defended, you know, maybe going to go attack the queen. I don't like pushing pawns where our king is, but if we go here, we're going to be just fine. And now, Polly plays a fascinating move here. Polly plays queen g4, which initiates an attack on the queen, but you can't really attack the same piece because it can take you. It's a queen trade. Now, you could live by this philosophy as a beginner for quite some time. If you trade your queen, you can't lose it. So as long as you get fair value in a trade, it might not be the worst decision in the world, since then you will not actually lose the piece that you are trying to protect. Martin actually goes here, and now I'm thinking, this is a fascinating position. This position is objectively equal. Why is it equal? Well, everything is a little strange. This rook's peculiar positioning no longer really matters because it serves a purpose of targeting this pawn. The king's being in the middle no longer matters because the queens have been traded. It's a lot easier to attack somebody when the queens are on the board or when the queen is a target. The structure is weird. White can't easily develop the pieces. Martin plays the move e5. All right, fascinating stuff. Polly plays rook h6, which is stupid, but somehow not that stupid because the position is pretty closed. Both sides have 8 pawns, and since both sides have 8 pawns, that means they have basically built up a fence. And when you have fences, you can sort of run around in your own little area, and you'll be okay. Martin plays bishop takes f7, just giving up the bishop for no reason. Just no reason at all. Something short circuits. Actually, I think it's not even short circuiting. I think he's programmed to play exactly the way he's supposed to. And Polly responds, and I'm thinking, that's it. Martin's going to lose 2 games. This is unfathomable. I could have not expected this in a million years. Now he proceeds to just develop the knight, somehow to that square, because the other 2 would have been capturable. I don't know. And the bird responds by just trampolining the rook to its death. Just boing, pew, and it gets captured, and now Martin is winning. Now, Martin on this channel has been humiliated for content probably a dozen times at this point, but every now and then he does lock in, if he can even experience such an emotion. Both sides now move their kings for reasons I can't really explain to you, and then both sides jump their knights to the outskirts of the board. Of course, knights do belong in the center, but they can come to the middle in just a second. F5. F5 on the board. That blunders a pawn 2 different ways, in particular to this knight. There was no point to that move, although, the bishop can now come out. Martin plays a fascinating move here. Tough to explain this one, folks. King to f1. He just moved the king from f1 to g1. Now he moved it back to f1. He's a little bit indecisive. The bird responds with a beautiful developing move. Probably the cleanest move of the game thus far. And we see the bishop developed. That blunders a pawn in the middle of the board. And now black actually has the advantage because black won several pawns, which matter. Martin plays, the bird instead plays knight to g3, forking the king and the knight. But again, a knight cannot attack a knight. You cannot attack a piece with the same piece. That doesn't work. That's like looking in the mirror. The knight can simply take the knight, and, well, Martin now has a 4-point material advantage, which is meaningless because he's an absolute idiot, but still, it goes for something. What is he even up? He's up a rook. He has an extra rook for a pawn. So it's basically a full rook. Now, the way you win this position is you need to activate this rook. I would put my rook on the last rank, target the bishop, the king, the bishop, and the rook, go put pressure on the pin piece, maybe jump in here with my knight like this, trade some pieces. King d8 played, and Martin gives a check. and then trades the bishop, which is fantastic. When you're winning, of course, you should make some trades. Get in your rooks, get in your knights. Beautiful move. So far, the most logical sequence thus far in this championship. Hey, what if I told you this game was 150 more moves? I'm not exaggerating. This is move 20. We're going to be here till 170. Buckle up. G5. Martin plays knight f5 check. That move just loses a knight. That move just straight up loses a knight. There is nothing complicated about this move. We have pawn takes knight. Knight d6. That move just loses a pawn. Knight takes e5. a5 instead, played by Polly. Rook h7 check. King d8, rook h8. If the king goes here, this is mate in one. A very famous diagram, rook and knight together, and then the knight needs to be protected, and the knight guards the rook and the king's escape squares, but the king goes here. Martin continues to hunt the bird. The king goes to b8, and Martin goes rook h5. Very nice technique. We're just going to pick up a couple of pawns and then maybe make a queen. Martin, the bird keeps running the king to a7. Martin doesn't take the pawns. He plays a4. I don't know how to explain this move. I'm not going to try to explain this move. The bird now blunders the pawn two different ways. Knight d6, pawn d6, rook g5, everything hanging. Instead, Martin moves the king very bravely to the middle of the board, and so does the bird. Nobody's taking anything. Martin now moves the rook back to the last rank of the board and loses the game because the bishop can go here and pin the knight to the rook, and there's no way to defend both. None of that happens. Instead, the bird takes the pawn, and now the knight can go to d6, attacking the bishop, which is pinned to the rook, and the bird goes all the way back. Martin, I don't even know who's who anymore because they're both morons, but one of them is a bird. It's excusable. Rook a6 played by Polly. Rook a6, Martin goes king d2, and the bird plays bishop to e6, and Martin finally moves his rook. He moves the rook. Now, folks, let me tell you something right now. You do not want to move a rook to where it is blocked by two more pieces on the same file. That is a horrible, horrible square for the rook. The bird goes back to g8. Martin plays knight c7, losing the knight in one move. Straight up, just king takes knight. He is attacking the rook. The bird moves the bishop to the other side of the board. What are we even looking at? Now the knight can take the rook. It's comeback season. Martin is going to get a third game. Martin plays king e2, blunders the knight once again. The bird plays bishop b3, doesn't take the rook. Now it's attacking the rook and the knight. Martin should save one of these pieces, or he should take the rook. Martin loses the knight by force to a check. The bird doesn't take the knight. Martin plays knight to f6. The rook is still hanging. The bird takes the rook, and now we have an endgame. Martin is now losing again. We are back to exactly where we started. Now, what if I told you that the game was another 120 moves? Because we are only on move 37. And this game went nearly 200 moves. Knight to b4, straight up just losing the knight in one move, although the knight is hanging here as well. Martin moves the knight, but loses it in one move anyway. The bird plays rook c6, defending its pawn. Martin plays knight to f6, back to the exact square it just was, losing the knight in one move. The bird takes the knight. Martin plays rook h1. The knight escapes. Martin is completely lost. Martin only has a rook and 4 pawns left. Martin no longer has a rook! Why does he play like this? Pawn takes h3. Now, I am ready to end this match if Polly takes the pawns. All Polly has to do is remove the pawns from the board, and white doesn't have checkmating material anymore. Those are the rules of chess. In theory, even if a pawn cannot move forward, one day it could, and it could become a queen, and it could win the game. Now, it goes here. Oh my god. It could just take all the pawns. It can now take both of those pawns. It doesn't. The bird continues to chase around this king. Rook d6, knight d3, f4. It's finally going to promote some pawns. Martin's just trying to lose this pawn, by the way. Martin's trying to lose this pawn. King g2, it doesn't take. Polly goes with the king and loses the knight. And it is at this point that it is sinking in for me that Martin might actually not just hold this game, he straight up might win. Because the truth is, if the polybot is programmed to lose, it's gonna find a way. It goes rook b6, Martin takes the pawn. I mean, there is just simply no shot. The only pawn that can move is gonna become a queen, right? There is no shot. Rook d6, okay. King goes here. He's coming to help. King f3, rook, okay. Okay, folks, I mean, this is not funny anymore, right? Like, there's no way the pawn is gonna become a queen. There's no way. The rook can just slide over and win the pawn. The rook can go to the other side and win the pawn. The rook is going to the other side, but Martin moves the king all the way back. The king goes here, king d3. I mean, when this pawn goes, you're obviously going to stop it, right? In this position, Pauly went here. And Martin is now winning this game again. Now, when I sat here programming these moves against these bots into each other, the games, I was angry. G8 queen on the board. Martin is giving some checks, and he is now just going to win. You check, you take, you take. A rook and a king cannot defend against the queen. A rook and a couple pawns can. If you put the rook on a specific square, sometimes the rook creates what's called a fortress. And now, in this position, Martin played the move, queen a6, and blundered his queen, which Pauly didn't even capture. Instead, it gave a check, and now it took. And Martin is gonna lose to this bot. Martin takes the rook, but it's over. You just push these pawns, and the king comes, and it's over, and it's, oh my god, it's not over. Not only is it not over, it is a draw, and not only is it a draw, there are still a few plot twists remaining. It is still theoretically possible for black to lose this position, because even though black is up a couple of pawns, the king is so unbelievably passive, and not only that, like at this point you are virtually guaranteed to win this pawn, and then if you win this pawn and the king is on the wrong square, you are virtually guaranteed to win these other pawns, and then you're winning in the king and pawn endgame, and that is exactly what happens here, because now Pauly is losing this position with the black pieces. I am going to vomit. I could not believe what I was looking at. If you thought it was just that easy, it's not. Martin goes king e4, king a8, then Martin doesn't take the pawn. Pauly goes here, Martin goes here, it's a draw again. Now Martin goes back, and Martin actually takes the pawn, and Martin is completely winning, because Martin is going to win this pawn, and then he's going to promote this pawn, or Martin is going to run this way, and then he's going to run away, and then he's still winning, and then Martin goes here, and then Martin's still winning, and Martin is no longer winning. Martin is now losing, because now Pauly the bot can go here, 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 and somehow Martin never ended up taking this pawn. He ran to the outskirts of the board, so now Martin is losing the game with the white pieces. If you thought that was the end of the story, of course it's not the end of the story. Now it's back to equal. Now it's back to losing. Now it is back to losing, because for whatever reason, Pauly ran the king over there. Why is there running the king over there? Who programmed these machines? Aren't you happy you watched 22 minutes of this video? Aren't you happy you watched 22 minutes? Some people left. The average watch time is like 11, 12 minutes. They're never going to see this. Folks, I'm just going to continue to click. Bro, he could just take the pawn. He actually got there, and then he lost, and now it's over. Because now Pauly is going to take this pawn, and it's done. I won't even continue the game because Martin can no longer win. Or that is what you would think, because Pauly never actually took the pawn. So in theory, Martin can actually still win this game. Because if you go there and then lose a piece and let me in, that is the only way that Martin can win this position. Or maybe Martin is going to go over here and win a couple of pawns. That is what you would think. Pauly finally starts promoting the piece. It can make a queen at any moment. Folks, I am not exaggerating. On the 104th move of the game, it made a rook. This is the 104th move of this game. Martin can still get over here, maybe take these pawns, and maybe promote. The only reason the game's not ending is because Martin has one final pawn remaining. And Pauly tried. It tried. It obviously doesn't have to win his pawn and make a queen. It can just checkmate him with the king and the rook. It's on the outskirts of the board now. And Pauly runs the king to the most passive square possible. And then Pauly runs around and around, and the king reactivates itself, and Martin runs around with the king. I'm just waiting for the king to walk over to the left side of the board and start taking the pawns. I told you this game was 180 moves, 150 at this point. Martin is getting closer. He's getting closer. King d6, king c3, he can take. The reason why this is a draw is because, folks, on the 154th move of this game, the game ended in a draw due to the 50-move rule. Nothing was captured. No pawns were pushed. Because black was unable to convert the win, it ends in a draw. A bird defeats Martin 1.5 to half in their match. I'm done. Get out of here.